Hello one, hello all. Happy birthday to Veeq7. It's his birthday today, so I want every comment to include a happy birthday wish to Veeq. So make sure you adhere to those rules. Those are the rules. And for his birthday, I got him a recording of my custom campaign from 2017, Starcraft, Inconsummate, as you can see before you. And we're going to be playing through this storied project and be reviewing it as we go, analyzing it as we go, and I'm also going to share some information about the development process and my growth since the development of this campaign back in 2017, 3 years ago. And yeah, all sorts of other stuff. Before we properly get into the project, however, I should take a look at a little something called the Readme. Now this is going to be a lot of reading, and it's going to be very bright because I'm using Notepad, so bear that in mind and shield your eyes if necessary. Alright, here we go. We are looking at the Readme for Inconsummate. I thought maybe there should be a PDF or something like that, right? I thought maybe there should be something a little bit more quote-unquote professional. But I think this is, okay as far as it goes. People can decide to open it up in Notepad++ or something if they want a darker theme and they have their thing configured that way. And I think this does an okay job introducing people to the project. I think generally, I have looked at readmes before, most notably. They usually don't contain anything, but when they do contain something of interest, I do point them out for the individuals who are watching my playthroughs, and I often do cite them, even if I don't show them on stream or on recording, because they often are meant to be read before you play the campaign, right? So this is almost akin to treating it like a manual more than anything else. And I really don't know how I'm going to react to a lot of the stuff that's in this README, and then in general. We're not going to read the whole thing. It's not really that necessary. But, for the most part, it has some installation instructions and links to download some stuff, including 161 installation. I think this was actually back when I was distributing just a folder for 161 rather than the current method that we have linked in the Wikidot, because of the fact that many people who download and install 161 actually have remastered installed as well, and it requires registry changes and stuff to work alongside that. So, and even in general, I think it requires some registry stuff to work properly no matter what. So it makes sense then that this would be an earlier thing, because this actually predates the remaster. That's how old this particular project is. I guess most campaigns predate the remaster, but this was like right on the cusp of that. I think it was announced as I was finishing it up or something like that. So yeah, there's just some notes here. It's like span 6 maps. Here's the setting and time. You can read more about it in Project Media, or you can just play it, obviously. I don't know why I really needed to include this note, because I feel like maybe I relied a little bit too much on external marketing. We're going to look at the Start@.net release thread after we're done with this README, and I'm going to sort of introduce you guys to that thing as well. There's some notes here that's like, other things that ideally, if I presented the information properly, you wouldn't need to know that you should wait for the end of briefing text. I actually had to add this in because a lot of people who were playing the project in recordings or whatever just skipped it because they thought that, specifically the first mission's briefing is very poorly paced, so they thought that it was actually over before it was properly over. And instead of patching that out to fix the pacing issues, I just added this information, and it kind of goes back. It's interesting to look at this kind of thing now, because if you consider the idea that the note here is you risk missing vital story info, right? The idea that vital story info would be presented in the middle of a cutscene, what essentially is a cutscene for Brood War standards, right, is, I think, pretty bad now. But looking back at this, I didn't really conceptualize it the same way. So it's really interesting to look at this now and see how many things I immediately can deconstruct and talk about how it's the wrong thing, right? And so the fact that this note in particular was predicated not because I made this observation myself and didn't feel like changing it, but because the observation was made for me on behalf of myself by other people who were playing it. And again, rather than fixing the problem or seeing if it was a problem, I must have just decided it wasn't a problem, and that these people were just being idiots. I should add this note to make sure that they know that they're being idiots. The idea of skippable introductory cutscenes, I think, is good for replayability. That's what this note is. And unfortunately, I didn't go whole hog with it, so that you can potentially, like the note says, I don't know if this is possible to actually desync stuff later on, but it is potentially something that can happen. That and I didn't want to set it up such that it would work otherwise. Like there should just be cutscene cleanup or whatever if you're going to have cutscenes, especially if you're going to have cutscenes in the middle of gameplay, which thankfully only happens once or twice, I think. So, and then of course the meme of the veteran level campaign. Well, the fact that I'm recommending save scumming and stuff like that is pretty stupid, and obviously the fact that I recommend heroes is pretty stupid. This is back many years ago. You can tell just by virtue of this one paragraph. It's the meme, and it's the heroes, and it's the save scumming. It's bleh, bleh. Don't worry, I'll be bleh-ing quite a bit. If you like the bleh feature of the Brood War Starcraft Let's Play, the campaign Let's Play, you're gonna really like its encore in this particular production. So stay tuned for bleh. And then in the 6th map, there's some spoilers here about the fact that there's music, and during cutscenes, I didn't make it a loop or whatever, whereas during gameplay I did. I can go into a little bit more detail about that system, probably in the middle of playing that map, so that's just something... I feel like it's kind of weird that I would have to put this note in here, though. Like, again, this is... You can tell that StarCraft is not really set up properly with music systems, and I didn't bother, like, actually implementing one. I think it would have made more sense to just replace the Terran soundtrack with something that's fitting for this particular experience. Rather than worry about, having custom music in the same way, right? So, like, 'cause in the 6th map, your race is set to Terran, so I could have done that. And instead, I decided to compose some pretty mediocre music for the purpose of it, being tied to cutscenes. And I understand what I was going for. I think it's a sound approach, but if your game engine does not support it, then you need to figure out some way to scale it back so that you can. And I was really not in the business of making too many concessions during the development of this project. And that obviously shows by the outset. At the very least, I do have this little note here that says, since it's the first major project I've completed, my goal is not to blow everyone's socks off, but to develop a bar of quality that all future work of mine should either meet or exceed. And I was, made it obvious that I was open to feedback, and that you can find my contact info towards the end, which you still can. I don't know how up to date that stuff is. Let's scroll past the spoiler patch notes. Yeah, I mean, for a time I didn't have a Twitter, but oh yeah, and this is just me doxing myself. This should just be Pronogo instead, but otherwise it's all accurate. So yeah, check that out. Anyway, that being said, I think it's cool to have like project media. I think it's cool to have credits in here and stuff like that. It makes sense. And this is really the first project that I've seen in a while, generally speaking, that actually warrants voice acting credits and stuff like that, because it does have a small cast of voice actors, but a lot of the work is done by myself. But and then of course just the sheer number of design credits, where you've got like the QAers, and then you've got the fucking art by DF, and then the mod support by this endless list of people. It's cool. I mean, Hydra's list is even more expansive now, but to look back at this is pretty cool, I think, in that particular respect. And I think for a little bit less of an eyesore, we'll take a look at the start.net thread. Before we do, though, I should play you guys the trailer. What do you guys say? Let's watch this trailer. I just need to... I can't maximize it over here, so we're just gonna have to Control M in here. Here you go.
The hubris of the firstborn knows no bounds. My will is, and has always been, to unite the Protoss with the Zerg. To merge into one, the twin pinnacles of creation. To transcend, at long last, unto the form promised to us by the gods. I foresaw that the Conclave would oppose this, just as they opposed the directives of their makers. Their resistance was inevitable, yet necessary, as was my demise. impermanence is a mortal concept. For as I created a daughter, so too did I create a son, an heir worthy of the title Overmind. The Terrans have been conquered. The Protoss have been vanquished. But the Swarm cannot rest while my will remains. Inconsummate. Now go forth, Magnate of the Swarm. You shall not be denied your birthright. Yes, Master!
And if you're looking for even more sympathetic embarrassment, you can find Raw Flesh's comment in the description, where he fails to understand the context of any of that. Not that there really is that much context that can be forgiven there. So yeah, that's the trailer. Where to begin? Holy moly. Well, interestingly enough, I actually had released this trailer, since I released this trailer before the project was complete, which is another thing we'll get into as time goes on. Probably delve a little bit more into that later on, much later on. The voice acting quality and the editor, specifically the edits, voice edits for the Overmind, way better, well, markedly better in the final product of the project when the lines from that trailer play in the actual game. And it's one of those things that I actually regret probably the most out of this whole trailer thing, is that I didn't just do it properly the first time or actually wait until completing the project before releasing the trailer for it. Yeah, I think it would have ended up being much better, generally speaking. So those are just some initial thoughts. Obviously, I feel like the trailer really started going when I actually started using gameplay footage. That felt a lot better. The pacing, obviously it helped that it was up tempo and the music, it was kind of, I don't know if it was in sync per se, but it was kind of interesting. And then you still had, like, by that point you were acclimatized to the Overmind's unfortunate voice acting and edits, that maybe there's some argument you can make there that it's like, okay, it's not as like unsettling at first or whatever. And it's also set to like in the middle of gameplay, so it's a little bit more understandable. I'd understand what I was going for with the whole cutscene thing, repurposing existing cutscenes, but ultimately it just feels tacky, I guess, is the best way that I can put it, or almost like pathetic in a way that is like trying very, very hard to be serious, but it's not like I have my own cutscenes. So what's the point of putting that stuff in there? At the very least, it didn't exactly falsely advertise anything. I mean, at least I didn't, I didn't play those cutscenes in the middle of the campaign itself, but at least it wasn't like some sort of goofy shit where there was like a Protoss carrier that uses the Skyfall weapon or whatever, or what's it called? The Planet Cracker ability that's going to be on Hydra. So like at least there wasn't something like that. I guess there was like the shot of infested Goliaths, and that didn't end up making an entrance. So there was a little bit of that, but at the very least, I used Blizzard's footage in a more useful or honest way than they did. So what one could say. I just feel like there was so much that I could have done differently looking back at that. I think the transitions between the music pieces could have been better, although it wasn't that bad. It's just there was some stuff that stuck out to me there. I feel like it's a weird mixed bag, the ending with Strawlium saying yes, master, because it does sound really like over the top in a way that is maybe a little bit too cringy, like maybe a little bit too out of place for what the rest of the trailer sounds like. But it's also way better edited. Like it just sounds better than the Overmind lines. So it's almost like, wait, there's actually good quality or, okay quality voice acting and edits in this production. And it's not like, that's what like the silver lining is there. It's like, oh, well, at least I know that there's going to be some better voice acting. But the other thing that this trailer did that I think was a little bit dishonest in an unintentional manner is that it positioned the Overmind as if it was like the engineer of this whole thing, to the point where maybe the Overmind is the engineer of the whole plot, but it positions him as the main character or a main character, a central character. And the Overmind is important to the story, but not in a way that it, is justified by what we just experienced in that trailer. So those are just some thoughts looking back at it now. I definitely can see an argument for why that would have turned people off more than anything else. But due to the low standards of the community, generally this was seen as like a fucking banging trailer. I mean, if we go back and look at it, just the ratings alone, 51-5. And again, this is not me stroking my own cock. I don't think that the trailer was high quality. Remember that. But like the community was generally positive. This looks epic. I need this campaign remastered. That's a cringe comment. Look sick, man. Church. Not going to say anything else. Really want to play this, but I was an idiot with the download link. And then Skytech RTS, aka Stratus Tygo, just quoting stuff from the original campaign or something. And then stoked to play this tonight, blah, 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 blah. And that guy had like a bunch of problems actually doing it. But yeah, there's... yeah. So basically, most people who bother to comment seem to be pretty happy with things. And that's just one of those cases where like I don't know how, but just by virtue of me almost like I did try, and I had something of a vision, and I sort of executed on it in some ways, as we'll get into when we actually play the project. But there is something about this whole experience where I'm still a little baffled about how I was received so well. The project itself was received so well. I did kind of make a splash. I mean, I made a fucking trailer. I had some music in there and stuff. I had some voice acting. It's the fact that most projects don't have trailers, don't have voice acting, and don't have mods kind of helped me out there. And we'll go into the rest of the thread pretty soon. But there's a lot to unpack. But ultimately, this should not have been such an outlier, in my opinion. This is something that I've been saying for a long time. It should not have been difficult or whatever to come up with a series, like an experience where the project in general is set apart from all of its peers just by virtue of having voice acting and custom AI and a trailer and all this other shit. Like, the trailer is obviously external marketing. It really has no bearing in the main project. It's just how some people might see it. But the fact that Inconsummate stood out from other projects because it had voice acting. I even used that as a selling point in this thread later on. Yeah, it's like the why should you play Inconsummate thing. So like I even use it myself, but that shouldn't be there. Like that's a little ridiculous. You know what I mean? So just some initial thoughts. Obviously, Ire must fall, consume the firstborn, conquer the Terrans, leave nothing in the Protoss homeworld untouched. This line over here, I'm okay with. I think it is a little misleading, but in a positive way. It's kind of subversive, where you initially are thinking of this as like it's establishing it as a Zerg-centered campaign, and it kind of even hints at like when the project is being set to. And maybe if I had used this in the trailer, that might have actually been more interesting or whatever. Like maybe if that's all the Overmind said entirely, and we forgot about the fucking like Strawlium being an allegory to Kerrigan or something like that. If we forget about all that stuff so that we're just focused on like the thematics of these two races fighting each other, and we also name drop the Terrans so people know that they're also involved in the conflict, I think that there's something about that would have been a lot stronger. And so if I had actually leaned into this marketing, even though this is stuff that I came up with at the last second when I was putting together the thread, I think that would have been a better like initial selling point. Like, it's kind of minimalist storytelling or plot, if you will. And it's like the basic premise. And you even kind of get a feeling for when this is in the setting, if you can read into that. But then, you got the trailer. You got some screenshots. Interestingly enough, the screenshots, I did a little weird tactic where I would blend the portrait with the static. Like I took a screenshot of when the portraits swap and took that and like masked it out to be 50% transparent over the hero portraits so that they're always kind of hidden in a way. Like once we get to Strawlium and the same sort of thing is happening. I don't really know that was just by chance. That wasn't intentional. I don't really know why that was like that. Like I think it's kind of cool, I guess, but it's almost like such a subtle thing that I don't think most people will have recognized it. And I don't think it accomplished necessarily what I wanted it to accomplish, where it's like, oh, it's hiding the identity of the hero. Like, I mean, especially since in the character listing, I just have the portraits right here anyway. Kind of just like takes away at it. But the intention was to add a little bit of an air of mystery there. And I think that's fine. The other thing that obviously I wanted to show off was like the corpse doodads, which I guess they don't really hold up at all. They're way too blurry and stuff like that, but there's something about them that still feels like you can kind of it's easy to understand what they are, generally speaking. Like you look at it and you know what they're supposed to be, right? So there's something associated with that. I'll go into a little bit more detail about those later on, but and then there's like character listing. I don't know about character listings. Like if we go and look at like if I go to the Deliverance page, this project isn't currently in development anymore, as I mentioned a while ago, but I have character listings over here and stuff. I think they're somewhat interesting and useful for the story writers. Oh, arrested. So yeah, I think material like that is useful for people who are actually involved in the production of the project because it will allow them to recenter any sort of dialogue or like you can write about their personality and stuff and maybe some elements of their history that are important for characterizing how they speak or what their actions are when you're figuring out the plot and you're writing dialogue. I don't really see much of anything else like useful. I don't see why it's useful to put this out there. I think this is just me aping and reusing the same process that other custom campaigns have done. I'm not going to go dredge up the thread right now, but there are a few threads out there like on campaign creations or whatever where people would post their projects as threads and they would have like character listings and a brief excerpt or whatever. And I didn't really decide whether or not this made sense to use for Inconsummate. I just aped it because why not? I had almost like because of all of the planning in these kinds of projects, I had for a long time. I don't know if this Google Doc documentation is still in here. I think it should still be here. But yeah, so I always write this stuff out anyway, and because I wrote it out in there, and because it was initially inspired by other custom campaigns, I think I just threw it in here as well. This kind of information is borderline like spoiler for me. It's like you're kind of showing your hand a little bit much, especially since you're putting it above the download link. Like realistically speaking, I think the download link should be the first thing, like underneath this header or whatever, underneath whatever your logo is and your headers are. Immediately following that, download, and then there should be like trailers, screenshots, and whatever other external marketing you want to throw in there, like information about why you should play it, like an argument for why you should play it or whatever. That's fine too. Maybe links to playthroughs like I do here. I think that would be fine. But the idea that you're going to have the download link all the way down here feels a little weird to me. Like I'm not really sure why. I'm not really sure why I would structure it this way. But again, this is like because I established that trend for myself, for my own projects in this thread. I mirrored this when I released like Hydra SCR. I think I had a similar thing where I didn't have a trailer for that project, but I would have like screenshots. I think I did the same thing for Nemesis and stuff. So yeah, I don't know. I just look at this and I'm thinking it doesn't make any sense to me to focus so heavily on trying to convince people to play your project. You should just drop the project and then say like, here's some information about the project if you're curious. But first and foremost, here's a fucking download link, you know? That's how I would structure it before. Like, I don't know if I actually do this in the Wikidot, but if I go to the Starcraft section and then I go to the download page, like these are all downloads. Yeah, it's the download link for the name, and then there's an information document. And that's something that you can go and look at afterwards if you're interested. And even then, like, I guess download and playthroughs is a little bit further down. But, so you can move that up on that individual page. But that seems more reasonable to me. Anyway, let's finally talk about the... Okay, first of all, before I talk about the why you should play Inconsummate thing, notice the 2017 copyright, 2017 Transcendent Arts. All right, it's a little bit of backstory here. Obviously, it's a meme that, just like Veteran Level Campaign, another meme sin that this... cardinal sin that this project commits is having the copyright logo there or the, like, maps trademark me or whatever. That's fucking embarrassing, honestly. A lot of sympathetic embarrassment there. Transcendent Arts, though, is it was originally going to be Church and I's project, or, like, production label or whatever, and we were gonna like be interested in bringing more people on. So it's sort of like a corollary to the Frauds Club, where like I've got Iquare and Veeq and Balethal and some other people who like DF obviously people who contribute to the whole production. Like these people are Frauds Club members. You know what I mean? That's the kind of way that I look at it now. Whereas the branding for this, like Transcendent Arts used to be Crescendo Entertainment, and Crescendo Entertainment never actually released anything besides what Church released on her own. So yeah, it's just been a real fucking wild ride with that individual. But they ghosted for like one time too many, and we just stopped talking finally. But that was pretty goofy. So yeah, that's why while it says it in here, it doesn't say it down here. It just says a Pronago production, and this is an image. And while like it used to actually have the Transcendent Arts thing as well, and now it's obviously that's missing. But obviously I had already rendered the trailer, so whatever. Anyway. Inconsummate stands apart from other Starcraft Brood War custom campaigns. It features a diverse voice cast. Yeah, I already talked about this. Kind of ridiculous that you have to read the lines out loud. Custom terrain. Okay, this is something that, again, I think is kind of ridiculous that I'm one of 2 or 3 projects that have... okay, so the other projects that have tile set edits. I think maybe one of iQuare's release campaigns has tile set edits. I might be mistaken about that. Maybe there's more than one. But I'm pretty sure the Reaver Menace has tile set edits. Flame Knives has tile set edits. I don't remember if Fiona the Hawk does. Probably both of those projects do. And that Bounce 'em Up campaign, Critter campaign that I died to, and the fucking video is titled Misery, so you know it was pretty good. Yeah, that is another campaign that has tile set edits, although I don't know if it actually has like custom tiles as much as it just like changes the Fog of War and stuff on certain tile sets. That being said, while I do think it's ridiculous, just like voice acting, I think it's a fair thing to point out. I don't know if I'm calling them the highest quality graphical edits the game has ever seen, but you know, maybe that was true at the time. Still ridiculous that, our standards are low as a community. A real challenge. Well, there's a puzzle. New heroes and abilities. Yeah, shouldn't have thrown those heroes in. I don't know. Abilities. The only ability that's new is actually the ghost hero with a stun. I don't think there's anything else that's new, actually, so this is kind of misleading. It should be new heroes. I should have just said new heroes, or modified heroes or something. And then obviously a story with scale. I should have just... I don't know why. I was really reaching for additional things to put in here, really. And if that wasn't enough. Additional chapters of the story will be produced. This is also like, wow, I'm really reaching for stuff. Oh, trust me, you won't want to miss out on this. I'm really reaching for shit here where I'm like promising sequels and stuff, right? And using that as like an example of, or a reason for why you should play this one, because eventually it'll get a sequel. I don't follow the logic there at all. I think, again, I was just like biting off a bit more than I could chew or overreaching in that particular respect or whatever. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. That was the send thread. 20-minute or almost 30-minute review of the marketing of this project and a little bit of a history lesson and stuff like that. So I hope that's exactly what you were hoping for when you clicked on this video, that we would just be doing that. XD. All right, so let's get back into the action here. I've re-enabled the music. You'll note that I had some troubles with the palette. This is before I met... DF actually was a part of this project, but before either of us had really dabbled in like main menu stuff. So in situations like this, nowadays, like when I was working on stuff for Deliverance's concept art and whatnot, I came to him with some questions about that stuff, and he was able to eventually get much higher quality edits than what we see here put together, which was nice. Obviously, like, even the mouse is fucked. So I don't know if maybe people looked at this and thought it was intentional. The other thing is, like, because there was no... Like, I don't know why I didn't just say... Oh, I know why. Because I made this logo here for Inconsummate, right? But then I couldn't indicate that the hotkey was still E. And so I decided to say press E or whatever. I don't know. I don't really get that at all. And this main menu over here is kind of embarrassing. I removed all of the custom stuff and then highlighted, or all the campaigns have been highlighted play custom, which is actually stolen from the Bob Love. Some more inside info for you. But the idea that I have this, like, this is really, really fucked beyond belief. This is almost like Razorback level bad. Almost. Not quite. But something that I definitely wish I had tried a little bit harder with, or knew more information about, or whatever. I just needed something there so that it wasn't like completely absent, I guess, is what I felt like. Anyway, we're jumping into the campaign now. We're finally here. We're going to be looking at the briefing. Oh yeah, and obviously I will be doing editor reviews for these maps, so strap in. All right, Mission 1 of Inconsummate, Act of God. A group of Raynor's raiders respond to a distress signal in the Zerg-infested province of Elar. crafted by me, by the way. So yeah, strap yourself in, boys. It's gonna be a long briefing.
The Overmind's plan has been jeopardized by these Terrans, too, Zora. And we seem to be no closer to removing them from the planet.
They were an unforeseen threat. Gone. One that none of us were prepared for. And even still, their meddling will prove to be of little consequence for my brood.
You seem rather quick to dismiss their significance, Cerebrate. A rather reckless assertion from one whose plans have failed to bear fruit.
Surely I need not prove my mettle again, after I alone paved the way for this invasion.
Your first creation may have done its duty too, Zora, but I have far less faith in your newest pet. Using the Terrans against one another is pointless when your brood can simply eradicate.
Yet my brood cannot simply eradicate them, can it? A good portion of my swarm has not made contact in several days, and I can only presume that they have been destroyed, along with the Magnate. And with the rest of the Overmind's brood spread thin as they are, we need an alternative to brute force. Focus on finding the Firstborn's leaders, and allow me to worry about the Terrans.
Do not forget, Cerebrate, that your warriors must deliver results. The Swarm may yet be beaten back by the Defenders, and failure at this stage is not an option.
As if I could forget the stakes. I will report my success soon.
When the truth is found to be lies, and all the joy within you dies. Don't you want somebody to love?
I don't believe this shit.
Stow it, Marine. I'm responsible for saving your ass when the Zerg bend you over. That means I'm in charge of the radio.
Yeah? What about my ears? Who's gonna save them?
Maybe this specialist will have some earplugs for you. What's his name again? Francesco?
Mission report says Francisco Casca. He's supposed to be some ex-Confederate ghost.
I don't know why Rayner okayed this operation. We're no friends of the Confederacy.
No, but on this shithole, anything that ain't Zerg is a friendly. And having a ghost around could be useful. I heard they can sense shit. You know, with their mind powers.
Oh, give me a break. Half the shit you say is straight out of a science fiction book. Besides, for all we know, this guy could be dead by now. What the hell was that?
Pilot, have we been hit?
Negative! The rest of the ships are down. Skies are too hot. I'm bringing us to the surface. Get ready for a rough landing.
Oh, shit!
Jump, Marine! Jump!
Fancy briefing. Sorry, I couldn't resist. If you watched Jay Reno's playthrough, you know why I had to say that. So, all right, I got so fucking triggered watching this, I had to write down notes because I knew there was going to be a lot here. So the first thing to point out is, well, there's a couple first things. I'm not sure if I should attack the length of the briefing first or the opener of the briefing first. It's too long, for sure. It's very poorly paced, I think, because the amount of information you actually get and the amount of lines of dialogue that are actually here, not really that much in the grand scheme of things, and yet it takes so fucking long to actually get anywhere, man. So it has that strange, confusing opening where it's just a bunch of fucking Zerg ASMR or whatever. I don't really... I know I was going for the idea that what you would have in the middle of playing this or in this briefing moment is like, oh, here's... sort of, I don't even know how to describe it. It's like a thematic opener where it's all about Zerg. But honestly, I think I was just out of ideas. I don't think I had another idea for an opener. And I think that was like almost a placeholder thing that I was going to revisit later, but didn't. I can't quite say for sure, but I'm that's what it reads like to me. Like trying to reverse engineer my own design process, plus what memories I have of that design process. Pretty sure I was just out of shit. And I should have thought a little bit more about that. And that's something that I could have comfortably come back to afterwards, but obviously I rushed the development of the first couple maps and then had to patch a bunch of shit out of those maps afterwards because I released with half the campaign actually done. So again, don't do that ever. Anyway, in the Zerg side of things, I feel like the Cerebrits, they're very slow and protracted with how they deliver their lines, but the actual content of the lines is kind of confusing to me. Like looking back, I think it's weird how they get into a sort of a bitch fit, a slap fight, if you will. And Tuzor is like, he says something about losing contact with his swarm and how that's really strange. Like to me, that would be like, why didn't you investigate this? Like, surely this is important. He sort of hints that maybe the issue was there's too much shit that was like as a pressing issue or whatever that made him think that there should be something else going on there. That he had to focus on something else or whatever. I think maybe that's okay, but it felt really, really awkward to me. Like I'm sure there could have been something that was a little bit better than that. You know what I mean? So I don't know what to make of the whole ordeal looking at the exchange between the Cerebrits, but that one note is very important because it's basically how we're able to, like, it's exposition dumping you about both the infested pet that he has and Strolium, the magnate. And the idea that you're going to have that kind of exposition dump or whatever, you do want to cloak it in something that actually makes sense. Like you want to have your dialogue accomplish both the exposition dumping and characterizing existing stuff. So you want it to serve multiple purposes so that the Tuzor dialogue ends up explaining something about his affinity for weird things compared to the other Cerebrits. Like he likes investing stuff. He likes having these like lesser creations or whatever and all that. But you know, there's got to be a logical reason for it if you want to take it seriously. And right now, I don't think it's possible to take it seriously just looking at the way that it was put together in here. So not 100% sure what to make of that, but I do feel like I could have worded that dialogue better so that there weren't, you know, the dialogue there wasn't going to essentially create more questions than it answered or whatever. And that's what I feel like that dialogue did. I also think that the title cards between the scenes were a little too lengthy for my liking. I think you could cut down a lot of maybe like 10, 15, 20 seconds of time if you just made those title cards a little snappier. I guess maybe I was trying to make it so that the sound stingers that I used had enough time to be felt and enough time to establish thematics. But I mean, aside from that, the only other reasoning I could imagine is that maybe people would read slowly. But it's really not that much information. You should be able to read that relatively quickly. And I think if your stingers are good enough, then they're going to have enough impact. And you can address pacing issues that come up as a result of shortening those a little bit better. I might actually, just for the sake of showcasing how much better I got at script writing and pacing and all that other stuff and voice acting and whatnot, I might remake this briefing, even though I don't think I'll be in a position to quote unquote remake Inconsummate ever or anytime soon anyway. But I might remake this briefing just for the sake of showing how much better things could be. You know what I mean? I actually have it written out anyway because I was working on a remake a while ago. So it wouldn't even be that much difficulty. It would just be the voice acting and assembly of it. So maybe I'll do that as at the end of this playthrough as like a sort of a last transitionary moment or whatever to show you guys what's possible. And yeah, something to think about, I guess. The Terran stuff is probably what I have the most number of issues with. The medic voice acting was kind of awkward. I should ask for retakes from that person. Definitely feels like maybe I didn't give them enough information about the setting of the scene, because she almost sounds like too aggro in the beginning. And especially for a line that's kind of meant to be charming, it definitely didn't come across that way. I feel like my Marine voice acting was like I was really fucking tired or something. That's what it comes across as. Like, I know I was trying to sound like I was fed up, but instead I just sounded like I was sleepy. And the fact that we use the Terrans for exposition right after using the Zerg for exposition, that also doesn't help this project's case. The idea that the medic wouldn't remember the name of the ghost they were hunting, another thing, like it almost like makes you not able to take these people seriously. And I guess it was done in a casual way where it kind of feels like it might fit, but it just ultimately was kind of awkward, I thought. And again, unbelievable. And then you look at like this is something that maybe not everybody noticed, but the Firebat has an obvious ADR point where the whole position of his head, the voice actor's head relative to the microphone, is inconsistent with what line of dialogue he currently had. So like that's when he says he heard he could sense shit. That's because I had to get that guy to do a retake of that, because the way that he said it first was an emphasis on shit. So he was like, I heard he can sense shit. Because he thought that it was actually that the ghost could sense feces. I don't know what possessed him to think that, but clearly I did not provide enough information. Well, actually, that's a case where I did provide enough information, because for all of the dialogue that I requested of people, I sent them my own version of the dialogue and said, just do this in your voice. So that kind of, there's a little bit of animosity between me and voice actors, because I'm literally just paying you to fucking do a basic job of saying the stuff exactly the way I said it. If you want to get creative, do that in another take. But yeah, pretty unfortunate. Also, just another side note, why does the radio cut out when a Scourge, like before the Scourge actually hits? I don't know what the fuck that was. That was a little weird. I do think that the opening to that scene was kind of thematic, though. The fact that we had like we go from the very serious and brooding Cerebrit stuff into this like weird musical note where it's like, oh, what the fuck is this sound? What is this song? And then it kind of crossfades into a more radioified mix. That was almost like a movie scene. Like, I actually think that the sound design there was pretty good, generally speaking. And the general background atmosphere of the being inside a dropship was not so heavy that you couldn't understand anything. Maybe it was a little too understated. I could entertain some criticism in that regard. I thought that generally speaking, the framing of the scene there was kind of cool. Certainly stronger than just the generic Cerebrit inside a fucking Yggdrasil or whatever. I thought it was definitely executed better. And the sound effects towards the end or whatever, like I kind of think it's weird that the music came in following the radio getting cut out was so like astronomically different than the rest of it. But again, the framing, generally speaking, the sound effects, generally speaking, I think I did an okay job there. So kind of happy about that. But that's it. That's my review of the briefing. Thanks for joining me. Welcome. On the next video, I'll actually play the game. No, I'm just kidding. Obviously, I'll play it. Objectives unknown. I don't know if it's really important to specify that, but I did. I think it's fine. It's okay. Oh yeah, before I actually go any further, I have to check check if my changes to the profile actually resulted in a better picture or if the colors are still fucked. So 1 sec.